Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Today we are going to be talking about business models. So business models are the way you generate revenues, right? So up till now, what we've talked of is there are firms. Firms are in an industry. Your firm typically has a technological capability or something that you are really good at doing that gives you some kind of an advantage over competition. That technological capability can be used to develop uh, different kinds of products targeting different sets of markets. You have technological capabilities that then can be used to develop a couple of different products targeting a couple of different markets. As a startup, you probably cannot do all of these markets simultaneously. So the first thing to do is choice. Which market will you choose first? And in the choice of the market, you will think about what is the level of competition, what are the kind of regulations, what is the size of the market, what is the growth rate of the market, are there strong competitors in that space, how will you reach the customers? All of these factors are important. Now, let us assume that we have found the market, we've decided what kind of product, we've decided what kind of customers we are targeting. What remains to be done is what kind of package are we going to offer? So are we going to ask them to pay on a monthly basis? Is it a subscription fee? Is it pay per use? All of these options are ways in which you can charge someone for a product or service that you are providing. So today we are going to look at business models which will try and unpack in different industries and sectors how are firms generating revenues from the customers that they have identified. So a business model describes how an organization functions to achieve its goals. It can also be considered as an activity system, activities geared towards total value creation. Now, what do I mean by these statements? Let us take a look. A tool used to map out a business model is something called a business model canvas. What we have here is that there are 9 cells. You will have key partners, key activities that you undertake, key resources that you have. That resource might be intellectual property. You have value propositions for your customer segments. Why should customers buy from you? There are many other spin-offs, startups, established companies. Why would they come to you, right? So there has to be some reason that they will choose you. Are you the best on the market? Yesterday we looked at the competitive matrix where we were trying to assess for the product you have, what are those technical parameters? Is it better quality? Is it safer? Is it higher performance? What is the reason why somebody should choose your product or your service? And then what are the channels, distribution channels? Will you have your own sales force? Will you partner with somebody who has a ready-made sales force that they work with? So you are focused on manufacturing and they do the selling, and there is some partnership or agreement. Or do you say, well, I want to build out my own sales force. I will have a team of 150 salespeople all across the country selling the product directly to consumers or to hospitals, as the case may be. Then you will have the cost structure, you will have the revenue streams. How will you raise funding or how will you generate revenues from these customers? For example, uh, non-science-based business. Uh, some of the students that I work with, they want to start a landscaping company. Now, landscapers, they are pruning trees, they are putting grass or turf or different kinds of things. Now, if you are trying to sell to a household, that's a completely different option. But you can do landscaping for an institute, you can do landscaping for a hospital, you can do landscaping for a hotel chain, you can do landscaping for an apartment complex, right? So while your technical or technological capability is, we are specialists in pruning or landscaping, but all of these are very distinct customer segments. The way you would get a procurement contract to do landscaping for an institute is probably going to be very different from trying to convince one homeowner to give you landscaping order, right? And if you are going to work with individual households, what is the nature of your task? The nature of your task is going to be, well, to survive and succeed as a business, I need to have 50 or 100 clients a month. How am I going to convince 50 households every month to do landscaping? So the challenge becomes, a lot of the time will be spent searching for customers and not doing the actual work. On the other hand, if you have a contract for annual maintenance with a large institution, then you have got that one major contract and you are getting revenues and your job is doing that landscape. So you got that contract, right? So in every sector, science-based sectors too, there are different sets of customers having different ways of setting up contracts and payments. And you have to choose, do you want to go mass market? And so small contracts or small sales to hundreds or thousands of people, or large orders with a couple of major clients. If you have large orders with a couple of major clients, it is a sort of a double-edged sword. The advantage is, if you have those contracts, things are a little bit more stable. However, the client has a lot more control. If you lose that one contract, suddenly you are in trouble, right? So then there are people who look at, well, what is preferred? Should I have one large client and several smaller clients? You don't want to give too much control over to your major client so that they say, well, we know that this supplier of landscaping services cannot go anywhere else, so we can ask him to give us discounts, and there is no option. He will have to, or he or she will have to make that choice. So with business model canvases, you sort of try and connect the customer segments you have identified to the way you will generate revenues from them. So now let us look at a couple of these different business models. First, let us see how specific it can be for science-based ventures. So customer segments can be users, there can be multiple markets like we discussed, and multiple segments, particularly for platform technologies. We were just discussing mathematics and how it can work across many different sectors. You could go into mining, you could go into oil and gas, you can go into banking. So anything that you develop in terms of analytics and analytic dashboards and computational or machine learning skills that you have can go into a range of different sectors, right? So the same underlying skill or technological capability can be operationalized in different markets to generate revenues. Customer relationships, you can have some automated system of connecting with customers here, or you can do co-creation and specialized design where you are working with your customer group. So what Epsilera did, they connected biologists and machine learning specialists, because they the bigger challenge or opportunity with machine learning is it helps you analyze large amounts of data fast and search for patterns in them, right? And so biotech data is often very, very large data sets. So typically, a lot of it was done less efficiently. Now with machine learning techniques, things can be a little bit more optimized and handled in a better manner. So Abcelera spent a lot of effort and time connecting specialists in biology with machine learning specialists to try and create a database structure, labeling structure for the data sets and storage of that data so that proper analysis can be done for biological data at scale. So that combination of biology and machine learning slowly started becoming that unique thing that gives them a sustainable competitive advantage over competition. For channels, you can have your own sales force or you can work with someone else for distribution. For science-based ventures, you can have value propositions for regulators, prescribers, payers. So whatever product, say you are making a medical device. So the medical device is something like we were discussing with one of our other participants. A medical device can be something that is convenient for a doctor to use. It is very limited training is needed to use it. The insurance company feels that the cost of the device is low, therefore they are happy to support the cost of the device or the testing charges. Health authorities or governments are interested in that device because uh, they prevent diseases from becoming more serious. So you are catching early detection of disease. We are still talking about one medical device, but that one device is important to different sets of people for different reasons, right? And so we have to map it out. If any one stakeholder sees a major problem with the device, chances are it won't get to the market. Everyone else will say yes, but if the insurance company says we are not going to pay for it, you are stuck, right? So it has to, when you design that device, when you talk to those customers and stakeholders, the way you analyze all that becomes very important. In Canada, for example, one other important thing in regulations is privacy, right? And even in Europe and parts of North America too, privacy is a major concern. So testing data, how that data, how it's collected, where it is stored, how secure that data is very important. How do you manage the transfer of data from this medical device in a remote location? That becomes important. So if you have a medical device that is more robust, that has some encryption, that makes sure that the data that you are sending out or transferring is in the same format and integratable with the data sets that already exist, then that will make it easier for someone else to say, yes, we want this. Even we will pay a little bit of premium for this. Your own key activities, like I said, your technological capabilities might be, well, we are good at designing these devices. We are good at manufacturing these devices. So there has to be something that is unique about your startup or your venture that that is core to you and your identity. This is what we are good at. We partner with someone on sales. We partner with someone else on, say, key resources. You partner with, say, a research institute, they will for some IP and licensing, but there will be some tasks that you are really good at doing. That is how you will be different and unique. So what kind of partners might you have? You can have partners as research universities, institutions, investors, funders, large pharmaceutical companies, contract research organizations, patient advocacy groups. In North America, particularly, you can have groups of patients who have some foundation, and those foundations and philanthropic foundations might sometimes provide funding to do research and testing. And non-profit organizations can be there. Your key resources can be patents, or you have a very experienced team of people who have industry expertise, who have formed ventures before, who have raised financing before. All of these can be the key resources that convey to investors that you have a strong chance of success. Then the kind of costs that you will face is development, prototyping costs. You will need to have facilities access. You will need to do testing. You will need to meet any and all regulatory standards. All of this is expensive, right? And then for all of that, you will need to have the equipment. Revenue streams. Typically for science-based ventures, there are longer timelines to revenue, right? So all of this you are doing, you are incurring the costs every month. The bills are coming for electricity, for salaries, for equipment, for consumables. And the revenues, you are trying to figure out what to do. And I mentioned to you maybe in an earlier session that sometimes you have this big goal, or you have this big plan that you will do something very innovative, nearly new to the world, first time in the world. And yet that is something that is going to take you a couple of years. But meanwhile, every month you have to pay the bills. So it is very common that you might say that, well, I will do some other services for some other companies or clients so that I get some revenues coming to me in the short term. Meanwhile, I will keep working on that bigger, longer term goal, right? For all of that, you have to figure out, well, what is that fee for service thing that you can do? What service can you provide? What contract option that you can do in the short term to keep generating revenues? If investors see that you have something where money is also coming in, it is not all dependent on some VC or angel investor. You also have your own ways of generating some revenue. That is a little bit more comfort. It gives an investor a little bit of reassurance that it is not as risky. There still will be a lot of risk in science-based ventures, but at least you have a pathway to generate some revenues. And there can be payments where you can sub-license your intellectual property. You can have upfront payments, milestone payments, royalty payments. Now, all of these terms are more common in the biotech sort of space. But for each industry, you will have different ways you can generate revenues for the different products or services you can provide. So a value proposition. So one of the things in the business model canvas is the value proposition. It is the reason why a customer chooses your product or service over competition, right? Industries have competition. Very rarely will you have a product where you are the only manufacturer or supplier in the whole world, or even in your own geographic market. What is much more common is whatever you are doing, whatever product or service that you are providing, there will be some competition or there will be some substitute. So you have to think, well, if a customer has options, why should they choose you? What is that reason where they will automatically come to you? And then you have to think about the unmet needs. You have to think about which of our customers' problems do we solve? What value do we deliver to the customer? Why should they choose us? Is it because we help them reduce costs? Is it because we help them generate more revenues? So they buy your product so they can mark it up and they can make more money? or they have some way of integrating your solution. You give them some technological advantage that they can add to their product. For example, if you think about say, let's think about these phones. Hmm? Let us think about the screens. If you design a screen that does not crack easily, so somebody who's a smartphone manufacturer will say that, well, just about everybody drops their phones. When they drop their phones, the screens break. Replacing screens is expensive. All customers want screens that will be water resistant and crack resistant in some. So as a science based venture, if you do research in your lab and come up with glass that is more stronger and uh, will resist breakages, you will have a very strong lineup of people waiting for you, right? So you might be in the lab just thinking, I'm working with glass. Who will want my product? But there is an immediate direct application, right? So Corning Glass and other glass companies, Gorilla Glass. So these are all the ways in which they are doing research. You remember the post-it notes example. Weaker adhesive found a market application. It took them a couple of years at that time, but now I'm hoping that somebody who comes up with these kind of ideas, they would find a faster pathway to market, right? So there are often times that the scientists in the lab, because they are focused on the science, what they may see as a failed experiment, what they may see as, well, this is something interesting, that might be exactly the kind of solution that someone else needs. One of Bob Langer's companies, it is said that emerged out of a conversation with his barber. Robert Langer is a chemical engineer, and he or one of his VCs was talking to his barber, and over a session, the barber said he was unhappy with all these different hair products that are available. They make tall claims on they will do this with the hair or whatever, and none of these products work. So Bob Langer thought about it and said, well, what kind of features do you want in your product? So the barber said, well, I want it to stay on for a long time. I want it to maintain shape. So he gave some factors. Now, what happened with that is Bob Langer went back to his lab and says, well, I am a polymer chemist and I can make something or set up a company or startup which can design polymers that achieve these goals. There is a company called Living Proof. Supposedly, it makes, and this is anecdotal, don't quote me on it, it makes more money than all the other science-based ventures that he has. In the sense that that's more money that generates for him. So there can be instances where there are small things. So as a scientist, it might be a small task for you, but there may be a true or important market need behind. So it is interesting and important as a scientist to always be on the lookout. Well, what are the kind of problems that people are facing? Be open to learning about problems in different sectors, different spaces. You might just find that you might have a skill or talent or capability that can easily solve a very complex problem in some other domain. Don't only look within your own domain and say, well, this is my training and these are the journals I read. This is the only set of people I talk to in my discipline. Look outside also. Be open. It is not easy. It's not comfortable. It is not common. It is much more easier to talk to people from your own area, from your own discipline, It's easy. The more challenging thing is to try and develop the comfort level to talk to people from other areas, right? And then over time, you will find that what you think is a very easy problem is something that somebody might be struggling with for 6 months or a year or 2 years. That is what is holding them back. So sometimes serendipitously, you have these kind of conversations. So Precision Nanosystems, a company from our Vancouver ecosystem, emerged from conversations like these between two professors. So then we think about which customer needs are we satisfying? What bundle of benefits are we offering to each customer segment? So he said that we are making products, but then you start thinking, what are people actually buying? Are they buying a product or are they buying a solution? Right? You remember that people have problems. What they expect from you is they are paying money and they are getting whatever kind of product, but that product should solve a problem for them. Right? If you think about electric vehicles, the fundamental need is getting from point A to B. The layer is they want to do it as cost effectively as possible. In doing it most cost effectively, if it is also environment friendly, that's better. If the electric vehicle has much better acceleration than a gas powered vehicle, that is an added bonus, right? And if the regulatory framework gives you some subsidies to buy that electric vehicle, all the more better, right? So all of these reasons have to come together to solve the fundamental need of getting from point A to B, right? So some of the researchers I work with are also in this space, and one of the things for electric vehicles that people are worried about and struggle is range anxiety. Is, well, if your gas tank is getting close to empty, you can always find a gas station or petrol pump anywhere nearby. You can go there. Well, for electric vehicles to really catch on and get adopted at a large scale, it's not so much about the car, it is also about the charging network. And charging network is then means that it's also about fast charge. Just having a charging network doesn't make full sense. You should have the capacity to do fast charging at scale. Because one of the other layers is, if you can fill your gas tank in 2 minutes or under 2 minutes, and if it takes 20 minutes to charge your battery to like 30% capacity, then it's still not perfect, right? So to unlock adoption, what are the technical parameters for a battery manufacturing researcher or startup? One of the key components is, how do we do fast charging while maintaining safety of the battery in climates that might go in Canada, say from -40 to Madras, where it is +40. The battery should work in all of these domains, and there are people doing that research. Right? So you see the connect between an experiment in the lab to what is needed by the consumer. And when that key turns, when you as the scientist turn that key and say, yes, we now have a battery that is safe, that is high performance, that is fast charging, then you are unlocking. And then the question is, well, if you have that kind of battery material, not only will it work for a car, it will work for a phone, it will work for an iPad, it will work for medical devices that might be implantable or in a remote location. So what were you? You were a battery material scientist in a lab. And suddenly what you are doing has applications in so many different markets with so many different products across the world. And that is science-based innovation and the potential that it holds. Then we talk about channels. So you can have your own sales force for different kinds of products. You might have sales over the web. You might have your own retail store. Typically, that is, most science-based businesses are upstream. Having your own store would be unusual, but still. Then indirect, you might have partners, you might have wholesalers, as the case may be. But the biggest question in this space is the act of purchasing and buying happens when people are in front of your store. People come inside your store, or people come to your website, and then they believe what you have said there, or there is some testimonial. But how do you get people to your door? How do you get people to your website? How do you create awareness? For a startup, perhaps one of the biggest questions to generate revenues is people should know you. And sometimes ways of knowing can be, well, we are the startup that got awards for the best, safest battery, or the highest performance. And then you go, it's in some newspaper and some magazines, industry magazine. That is the utility of some of these awards at times. And there are some awards that are more reputed than others. If you get some industry standard kind of an award, that is meaningful in its own right. Or you say, we have a team and we have advisors. And one of our advisors is a battery scientist or researcher who has started 5 companies from their lab, and they are also on our team. They are also supporting us. Last night, I was reading about a company. I think it's a vaccine company from Germany. And it was scientists who were describing their experience with a startup. And they said, we knocked on 200 plus doors and nobody responded. We wanted money. We had formed our company, our startup. And very soon we were running out of funds because the bills were coming, revenue was not in place. And they struggled for a long time. And chance conversation, because they were saying, the way one of the sentences in that article was, we started the company, we were not trained or planning to be entrepreneurs. We started the company because the logic to us was so obvious that this is going to be successful that we thought, why shouldn't we start it? This is going to work. As scientists, we see the evidence that this is going to work. And yet when they were talking to investors, now investors may not have that same technical background. The investors are looking at it from a risk perspective. From a risk perspective, new founders, no track record, just some intellectual property. Should we invest? More than 200 people said no. And they are running out of money. And in one conference, they met one person who was a very established researcher in that field who had started a couple of companies. They talked with him for 30 minutes and he said, I believe you. And I will come on board as an advisor. He came on board as an advisor because he was such a reputed person in the industry and in the domain. When investors saw that he's on board as an advisor, fund started flowing. Had the idea changed? No. Had the intellectual property changed? No. Had the founders changed? No. It all got unlocked because of that one person coming on board. And that person came on board not because he just personally liked these people. No. He would have come on board because he understood the scientific evidence that we were sharing. Right? And so the challenges that you face are being faced by scientists, engineers across the world. They are facing the same issues. They are facing the same problem. They are moving and thinking the same way as you are doing. And they are also struggling. They are also knocking on 200 doors. And sometimes something clicks and then you move forward. And that's the way, that's the journey and how it works out. Customer relationships. How do you acquire customers? How do you retain customers? What are the different products? One of the other things that I will mention here is I have studied companies where they have a one fantastic product. They start a company, got a great product, science-based vaccine or some medical device or something. Based on sales of that one product, there are a couple of companies that have gone up to $1 billion in sales. $1 billion in sales. And yet, after a couple of years, there are no follow-on products. That was their one blockbuster. And they made the money for a couple of years, and there is nothing else in the pipeline. So when you form a startup, you have that one killer product that is better than competition, obviously better, so people come to you. That is great. That is good. You will be struggling with scaling up, which is another issue, which is, well, you plan to make 500 units in the first month, you've got orders for 50,000. What will you do? That is another problem. But as a startup, you also need to have a longer term strategy or plan, which is, well, what are the different things that I will make in future, right? What is the next set of things? Or will I be known for this company that makes one product or one medical device and that's it, right? So for you to grow and succeed, you have to do more. There is a company called, yeah. Yes. So the market research will become a little bit easier because if you have your own sales team, your own team will be talking to customers and telling you this is the feedback we are getting, this is what doctors are telling us, this is what other market segments are telling us. So you will get more information, right? The act of sale is also going to give you some information as to what is the price people are preferring, what are they saying should be the terms of the contract. So you'll get some information along those lines. Now, one of the companies also in Vancouver, and the reason I give all these examples from that region is because I've studied that a little bit more, is a company called Stem Cell. And Stem Cell at one point of time was one of the biggest biotechnology companies in Canada. It might, even now, it might be one of the bigger ones. It started in an academic lab because one professor found that he needed some reagents and some products, and it wasn't easy to acquire it. He said, well, let me find a way to do it myself. Didn't want to start a venture, just wanted to do it. And then after some time, people asked and said, well, if you are making it, can you give us some? Other people in the field. And slowly, that network started growing. And several years later, he was doing this on the side without starting a company. Several years later, he said, let me start a company. All this is happening late 80s, early 90s. And then he started a venture. Students started getting involved in this. Over time, this company grew. Now their products, and then they started doing more reagents, more consumables, more things. And now they have a range of, I think, several hundred, if not 1,000 plus products that are sold in, I don't know, 100 plus countries across the world. You can look at the specifics in a company called Stem Cell Biotechnology, or Stem Cell as it is more commonly known. And you can get all the latest numbers. You can look at the history. There are interviews of its founder, Alan Eves, and you can see, well, what's his story. At one stage, nobody was willing to give him funding to expand the company, and he had to give a second mortgage on his own, take a second mortgage on his own house. And if the company had wouldn't have survived, he might have struggled to manage his own home. Right? So that is the kind of risk that people were taking. So that's an example of having a pipeline of products over time, the risks that scientists take to raise funding. The funding environment in most countries is way better than it was 20, 30 years ago, right? At least now you have all these options. So what people were able to do, the few successes that people had in the 80s, 90s, and so on. Now it is, you have so many incubators, accelerators, government funds. You have lots of options. Of course, competition is there, But for people who do the hard work of thinking very deeply, planning before they start the venture, you will stand a better chance. Then for customer relationships, depending on the kind of contracts you have, you might have personal assistants, dedicated personal assistants, self-service, automated service, and all of these different options that exist to connect with your customers and then generate revenues from them. Now, what can be the ways you can generate revenues? You can have transaction revenues from one-time payments. So you are giving a product or service and they pay you for it, transaction. Or you can say recurring revenues, monthly payments or annual contracts. Or you can have asset sales like book sales. You can have usage fees. The more you use a service, the more you pay for it. Think about the charges that you pay for your cell phones or internet services. You can have prepaid, you can have postpaid, you have all of these different ways in which they can generate revenues. Sometimes you click on an ad or you buy something from an app. Some fraction of that payment might be going to somebody else, right? Then subscription fees. If you have music subscriptions or some other subscriptions, you're paying separately for that. Lending, leasing, renting, licensing, brokerage fees, advertising. All of these are different ways in which you can charge customers. The same customers you had identified, the customers who have some unmet need, and you are satisfying that need and you are providing some valuable service. And because of that, you have all of these options. And not all customers will pay you all of these things. Some customers might want more, some customers might want less. Think about a car dealership. Some people just buy a car, never go back to that place to get it serviced. Other people will go for service, and during the service, they will say, put these new audio system or put this new spoiler or put something else. And so what are you doing? In effect, they have logged you in. Think about the Apple ecosystem. You buy one device and then slowly it gets you to, well, it would be good if an iPad was there. It would be good if an iPod was there. It would be good if those speakers or earbuds are there. So what are they doing? They are getting you into their own ecosystem. And then they will say, well, you can have a subscription for Apple Music. You can have a subscription for data or whatever. Like you ran out of space, you pay for space. So what are they doing? They are locking you in. For science-based ventures, increasingly, the product that you have is data. Data archival costs can be there. Data storage, encryption costs can be there. So you can have a range of different ways in which you can charge customers. Of course, there is a social element to it, right? You can have one approach. If you have investors or private investors, they will say charge as much as you can. But if you control your own entity, you have not taken a lot of funds and you are not under that kind of pressure, you can decide what you want. You might say that, well, I will provide good quality service, but I will also try to make sure that my services are most affordable to the maximum number of people, right? So it's not always about charging the most money. I don't want you to get that impression that I'm advocating for that. Instead, you should be aware of these options and then you decide what is best for your venture. Yeah, brokerage might be like, this is in case where you are in between buyers and sellers at times. So that kind of concept comes in where you can charge from both buyer and seller certain fees. So those kind of contexts are just ways in which you can charge. Sometimes it might be for ways you hold data in some form. To brokerage. Well, think about data. So if you are a science-based venture and you have access to healthcare information or healthcare data, you might charge for the collection of data, you might charge for the holding of data, and you might charge both the person providing and you might also charge for collecting, collating, analyzing that data and passing it on to a health authority. Right? So you can be in the middle organizing that, and then it can be charged on both ends. So these kind of options. Then you can have fixed pricing, product feature dependent. So you have a medical device, you can have various models for that device. Think about BP machines. You can have a very simple machine, you can have something that measures BP and something else, and you have different models for which you can have different charges. Customer segment dependent. So some products are or models are offered to some segment and not some other segment. Volume dependent. If you buy 200 of those units, you will get a different price. If you buy 2 units or 1 unit, you have a different price, right? And same way you have for perishable or some of these, like if you think about vaccines and things, you can have bulk discounts and all of these options. So all of these are ways in which you can have a range of ways you can charge revenues or generate revenues for your idea. This will also be sector dependent. For example, one of the things not necessarily science based is electric utilities. So yesterday I was reading about business models for electric utilities. What if you are a large monopoly which provides electricity for a region? How do you charge people? So that is typically more monopoly. You don't have like 5 different electricity providers. You just have whoever is the main provider. That is who you get it from. Now, increasingly, what is happening? People are putting up their solar cells. They are generating their own electricity. And sometimes some large entities, they are generating enough electricity that they are sending electricity back to the grid. That wasn't the case earlier. So now you have a two-way flow. And then your business models are changing, right? And so then it becomes a question, well, if there is wind energy, there is solar energy, there is hydro energy, and there are these different entities who can generate, then how do you find a way to keep a monopolistic utility profitable, right? So those are the kind of questions that are particularly in the US. There is a lot of renewable energy now installed, but from some reports I was reading, the challenge was there is enough installed capacity, but that electricity is not flowing into the system because the existing incumbent companies don't want that. So you have these solar cells capacities, electricity getting generated, but that generated electricity is not going back into the grid. We are preventing some place. So you can have some of these incumbent and regulatory challenges. Yes. Yes, so some of them are stored. So Tesla has a company which is to do with batteries also, right? Yeah, yeah. So when you have that kind of a system, people are trying to be independent, but there are some larger entities. They are also trying to store and sell through batteries. So there is some of that happening, but there is a lot more that could be done. In Europe, there are some countries which are, I think there were some reports which were suggesting that 1 day's complete electricity consumption for the whole country could be through renewable energy. So things are reaching at that level. Not all through the year, but 1 day the whole country, whatever you run, they have enough capacity, enough electricity being generated that 1 day's complete electricity consumption in smaller European countries can now be satisfied by the installed renewable energy. So there is a lot of data information. There are some organizations which collect that data and track the cost per unit, how much it is costing. Early, for a long time, renewable energy was more expensive and coal-fired plants were generating electricity at a lower cost. But now with the materials advancements and the efficiency increases in solar cells, it is slowly becoming much more cost effective, which means that there is more and more uptake. Right? So all of that data and papers are available on that. Okay. So other questions to consider when you are talking about startups and business models is, what will the startup need to operate? How much cash? What's the size of the team, the lab space, the equipment? What will the development costs be and what is the timeline? How will the startup attract customers and partners? What will the price be? So in your industry sector for your competitors, you cannot be way off the price of competition, right? You can be lower, of course, but it's difficult to charge a premium price unless you have a very unique advantage, something that people really want. Then you can say, yeah, we are charging higher price. Tesla had done that. Their first product was at the top end, the Roadster, right? So instead of starting with Model 3, they started with the Roadster and moved down the market. They started with a premium product. The idea was, with a premium product, you can charge a high price. When you charge a high price, you have more margins. When you charge a high price and you have more margins, you need to sell a lesser number of units to make money. With a small company, it's often easier to make lesser number of units. A small company cannot make hundreds of thousands of cars in the first year. They don't have the investment, they don't have the infrastructure. And because the three co-founders that Tesla had, none of them had any automotive industry experience. And we have talked over email with one of the co-founders of Tesla. I have written a paper on Tesla's strategy of market entry. Three of them had experience in the IT or information technology and device space. All three of them, the co-founders. And for them, the logic was, if you are offering some new feature, then typically, say in consumer electronics, the latest features come in the premium TVs, or the latest features come in the premium devices. And the lower end devices are mass market, lower priced, small margins, and you have to sell very, very large numbers. But premium devices, the iPhone Pro Maxes and so on, those premium devices will have a very high margin. So it makes sense for startups sometimes to go at the top end premium, lower units of production, higher margin. That's what Tesla did, and then they moved down market. With every additional model that they launched on the market, it was a little bit lower than the previous one. Finally ending with that Model 3 that they had, which is the lowest priced model, mass market. By the time they had made the money from the other models and got investor interest to set up factories to manufacture in large scale. Then you think about deciding, well, will you do all the manufacturing in-house? Will you manufacture and outsource components, or will you have some components that you will source from some other countries and the rest you will assemble, say, in the country? Okay, so here is an example of a business model canvas for biochar. Biochar is from waste, it's from forest products and burning of that. And so what is the value proposition for biochar? If you look at it, it is increased access to eco products, biochar, biogas, biofertilizers, water purifiers. Low costs are there for bioproducts. Waste recycling into biochar can save the ecosystem. There is job creation, climate action and better carbon sequestration, and clean water, clean facilities. So these are all ways in which different sets of stakeholders can find benefit. What are the customer segments for biochar? Farmers, traders, NGOs, households, restaurants, schools, universities, hospitals, and so on. How will they make revenues? Bottom right. Direct sale of the product, which can be biochar, which can be biogas, which can be biofertilizer, it can be water purifiers. Revenues through equity and seed funds by VCs, marketing services by offering warehousing and logistics, intellectual property rights and its licensing, consulting services that the startup can offer, and then VC and angel investments. These are all ways in which they can generate funds for the startup to continue. So this is an example of how you can make a business model canvas for your own startup. What are the key activities that this particular startup does? Technology optimization, collection and supply of raw materials, eco-production of quality biochar, marketing of biochar, market to attract retail clients, R&D, customer relationships, capacity building. And what resources do they have, what they need? Physical resources, financial resources, and labor force. So these are just indicative of what you would need to get this off the ground. Now let us look at something more specific. Here are 3 actual companies in the biomedical domain in India, and this is their actual business model. So the font size is too small. You can read it when I get the slides to you today. But the first one is a portable electrocardiogram, portable ECG machine. They are decoupling image acquisition and processing. They have a dedicated R&D unit in India. Technology is sourced from India. Some components are sourced from China. All of the production is done in India. Who are the customers? Rural hospitals, clinics, primary health centers. They access customers through a network of sales agents and 100 plus dealers to cover even remote areas. And what is the value proposition, or what is the way they are moving forward? They try to minimize cost at every step of the value chain. And their income is only from product sales. So just one way of generating revenue, product sales of this electrocardiogram machine that can be used in remote regions. Second one, a device to detect preventable blindness. Indian company. Value proposition, affordable access to healthcare at low cost, preventative screening to detect preventative blindness, which can be treated immediately, ease of use, no doctor required. It can be linked to telemedicine and automated analysis by software. So image processing, math skills. Recombination of established technology. So all of the technologies exist. They have found a way to package it and come up with a product. R&D unit located in India, low cost raw materials, local supply chain in India, global sourcing for 3 critical parts. So 3 parts they couldn't find in India, they are getting it from some other place. Low cost production in India, partially outsourced. Again, customers are rural hospitals, eye clinics, primary health centers. Distribution channels are still in growth phase. Distributors are selling it, and there are direct sales also. And how are they generating revenues? Product sales, pay per use. You just go in there, you get that test done, you pay for that test. Leasing, software as a service. All of these ways in which that particular startup in India is providing this device to detect preventable blindness early stage. With hardly any training needed, people can use it. Third one, device to detect infectious diseases. Indian company. Again, affordability and access to healthcare at low cost. Patients are tested where they are treated, in rural hospitals or in rural primary healthcare centers. Ease of use, no specialist required. So imagine all of that technology development, you are designing it in such a way, you are making it as painless as possible for people to say yes. The doctor can say yes, the patient sees value, they say, we'll pay you the 20 rupees or 100 rupees, whatever is the cost of that testing. And they get the advantage or the benefit in a very rural, remote setting, which might be a primary healthcare center. Again, cost saving through new but established technology, not used for this analysis before. So maybe that technology was being used for something else, These people figured out a way to use it for this kind of preventative testing. And so the technology existed, they found a new market application. Low cost raw materials and supply chain in India, global sourcing for one component. One component is critical that is not made in India, they source that from abroad. Low cost production in India with some joint venture partner. So it's made here. Who are the customers? Hospitals, rural clinics, primary health centers. Distribution is through that joint venture with its sales force. So they are not worried about distribution. The distribution is done by a partner. They focus on the technology development. How are they generating revenues? By product sales, by licensing fees, shareholder income from the stake in the joint venture. So they have a couple of ways they are generating revenues. So these are all actual companies in India starting as ventures from labs, figuring out an unmet need in the market, figuring out customers, deciding what components to manufacture themselves, what critical component needs to be bought from outside the country, assembling it here, then selling that product either through partnership or selling that product through your own sales force, and then generating revenue from product sales, from licensing fees, from pay-per-use. Do you see the pathway? That step by step they are deciding what to do. These are actual companies in India in this space. Okay, so here is another company called Kala Pharmaceuticals from MIT. So biopharma focused on discovery, development, and commercialization of innovative therapies for diseases of the eye. 2 marketed products, which has a platform which is a mucus penetrating particle designed to address unmet medical need in dry eye disease and post-ocular surgery. So 2 very specific or reasonably specific applications. There is a pipeline with multiple proprietary development programs targeted to address front and back of the eye diseases. Kala holds worldwide rights and intellectual property on all marketed products. That is their strength. We expect to commercialize our products in the US with our own focused specialty sales force. So where are they spending their money? They are spending their money to hire their own sales force of 150 salespeople over time. That will call on ophthalmologists and optometrists. So remember, I told you in the healthcare space, you have to figure out who are you selling to? Who do you have to convince? In this application for this market, the people who are important are ophthalmologists and optometrists. So the sales force, the people that they hire, so if they have raised venture financing, which they have, part of that money is used to hire these people. And they are controlling it, everything themselves. They control their own IP. They have their own sales force. They are not dependent on anyone else. They have their own pipeline with future drugs. So I told you earlier in this class that you don't want to be a one product company. You want to have a plan for multiple products down the line. We are evaluating a variety of collaboration, distribution, and marketing arrangements with other third parties for the European market. So focus on first market in the US, which they know more. And then you remember that I gave you the example of the bowling ball and 9 pins. The first pin is the US, next pin is Europe. And all of these kind of details are available for free if you look at these companies' websites, press releases, presentations. So the information is all there in front of you. You just have to look for it and understand it. And this one is also from the S1. So when I say S1, it is from the Securities and Exchange Commission that I was mentioning yesterday. Accelera. UBC spin-off. We aim to become the centralized operating system for next generation antibody discovery. So what are they focused on? Antibody discovery. We forge partnership with drug developers of all sizes, customer segments, large cap pharmaceutical companies to small biotechnology companies, different customer segments. Technological capability is in antibody discovery. Our product, what are they selling? Data. Our product to partners is data. Data on the composition of matter of antibodies and their properties. We enter into contracts that allow us rights to use the data we generate. So people are bringing candidates or data sets to them. They generate more data about the characterization of these antibodies. And in doing that characterization, they learn and improve their own algorithms. And we generate the data that we generate, we use it for improving our own technology stack and fueling ML algorithms. So it is a biotech plus computing or ML analysis company. Now, why do people want to partner with Accelera? What is the value proposition? Value proposition is we empower partners to move quickly at lower cost and tackle the toughest problems in drug development. So if you have a very complex problem, you are struggling in antibody discovery, come to us. We will do it faster, we will do it cheaper. Very compelling value proposition, which is why they got 150 plus partnerships when they were focusing on partnerships. Our partnership agreements include payments for technology access and performance. So this is the way they are generating money from this activity of antibody discovery. Downstream payments in the form of clinical and commercial milestone payments. Royalties on net sales. So if any of these antibodies go through preclinical, go through clinical, and someday become a drug on the market, then there will be some payments back to Accelera. All of this info available publicly in SEC files. You just have to search for it. If you know what you're looking for, you will see all of the questions that you have, or many of the questions that you have can be answered. In research, one of the things that typically people say is focus on finding a real good question, right? The answers will come. Okay, here's another company, Harvard spin-off, focus, it's called Moderna of the vaccines. They have all of these partnerships. This was also, Langer was also listed as one of the co-founders. We rely on digitization. Again, the focus is data. They are making and selling vaccines, but they see themselves as a data company. Data is important. To ensure seamless integration across the ecosystem, enable the ability to share and access data, permit the capability to scale, satisfy ever-increasing demands for research mRNA for preclinical and GLP toxicology studies, as well as manufacturing mRNA to supply an expanding number of clinical trials. Okay, so all of these, again, publicly available information. Another University of Toronto spin-off, commercial stage biotech company. They are making surface modification additives used in FDA cleared medical devices. Clinically proven to reduce infection. So hospitals are often also places where you can get an infection. You go to get a problem solved, sometimes you get hospital acquired infection, right? And they are very serious, very challenging. One of the major causes of fatalities in developed countries, and yeah, of course, developing countries too. And so they have come up with some additives that can be used for medical devices to reduce infection. They gave an exclusive worldwide release to a company called Fresenius, and uh, for various to use this technology for various components of their dialysis circuits for treating end-stage renal disease, including dialyzers and bloodlines. Fresenius is the world's largest provider of products and services for individuals undergoing dialysis. So many people have kidney disease, they need dialysis. Dialysis can be a situation where you can get infections. So this company, which is a science-based venture, which has an additive which prevents or minimizes infections, uh, got their technology license to this world's largest provider of uh, dialysis equipment. And then finally, after 10 years, it sold all of its business to Evonik, which is a global chemicals manufacturer. So these are all ways in which science-based ventures can generate revenues from the research and the ventures that they are developing. Okay, here is an example of digital medicine building blocks. So people who are interested in digital healthcare options. So just look at the last column if you can read it. Ways that you can generate revenues is reimbursed prescription, fee for service, self-pay, data aggregation and reuse, platform sub-licensing, feature upgrade fees, data archiving. So these are all the ways in which you can charge. Different sets of customers, or sometimes the same customers can pay you a set of fees. So this is the way you can further divide all of the ways you can generate revenues from a business model if you're doing something related to digital healthcare. If you're running a lab-based contract, CRO kind of an organization, here is a comparison of lab-based business models, which looks at ways in which you can bill, third-party billing, client billing, direct patient billing. Who are the people who will pay? They can be payers, healthcare organizations, value-based reimbursement, research institutions. So all of these are ways. You can charge for diagnostic service, you can charge for consumer-facing service. So all of these options are there. If you are set up as a for-profit, as a non-profit, these options can be utilized. So this is further information on insurance companies to accompany that table. Now, what is important in all of this is how do you make sure that your venture is set up properly, and how do you make sure that your venture survives? So now let us flip the argument and say, why do ventures fail? So if we understand why they fail, hopefully we can be better prepared. The first reason from some surveys that why a venture failed is there was no market need. Over 40% of startups fail because what they make, nobody needed it. However much high quality research you did, ultimately the product or service you offered, it wasn't clear who wanted it. Second most important, ran out of cash. Third, not the right team. You had the right technology, you had product market fit, but the people you had on your team, they didn't have the right experience or expertise. And so you couldn't grow. For example, for one of them, they are investing heavily in 150 salespeople. Maybe that is the need of that sector. So suppose you had your team who had great technology and IP, but you didn't invest in the sales force, no sales. So what is important for your sector to generate sales, you have to understand. Then, got out-competed because competitive matrix. You came up with some product or feature, Your competitors saw that people were liking it. Maybe you didn't have strong intellectual property protection. Competitors said thank you. They started making it themselves. And more people know about competition because they have been there on the market longer. You are new, they have been there for 30 years. And then you have no choice. Pricing and cost issues. Because the analytics, you hadn't done the analysis on the price properly, you find that your competitors can continue to sell at a lower price than you. You are trying to reduce the manufacturing costs. You're not able to reduce it. Your product is continually priced higher. Even when it is good, nobody will go for it, or very few people will go for it. User unfriendly product. IP is there, better than competition. People just struggle to use it, or you need too much training. Product without a business model. Product where it's not clear how will people pay for it. This is also common. So it's coming up pretty low on this list. But often science-based ventures, one of the things they struggle with is, well, what is the way? Are we going to ask them for subscription fees? Are you going to ask them for annual contracts? What is the way you are going to generate revenues, right? Which is what we have been discussing today. Poor marketing. So I touched upon awareness. You are a new startup, and so you don't have people knowing about you, knowing about your team, knowing about your product. If people are not aware, even if you've got a great product, you won't have sales. Without sales, you don't have revenue. Without revenue, you run out of cash. And finally, ignore customers. So you never thought of customers, or you didn't think enough about how to reach those customers. And so you know those customers are there, you know that they have this unmet need, but you didn't make that connection. How will they know about my product? How will I send my product to them? What is the distribution channel? These are actual failure cases compiled. And here are some quotes. The cost of providing the program exceeds what our customers can pay for it. Very common problem. Because your assumption is we are making a great product, people will buy. Question is at what price? The market might just say, great product, I cannot pay that amount. How many times do you go to the market and you have that same reaction? Say, very good, but it's too expensive. We don't want to spend that amount of money. The lithium metal technology worked for products like drones, but the big money is in the automotive sector for batteries. So our investors weren't willing to give the money or sink in the money needed to develop the battery for electric vehicles. What is this? They made the wrong choice of the first target market. The first pin was not correct. The first pin should have been automotive. Their first pin was drones. Which means they hadn't understood the industry structure. Where is the money in this sector? In retrospect, if we had a senior finance person and a senior ops person, it would have been a completely different story. Because we always thought about our technology, we thought about our science. We didn't think that costs were important. We didn't think of how to bring down manufacturing costs. Look at this quote related to the first one. Because you didn't have that finance person, you didn't have that ops person, your costs were high. And therefore, your customers are not willing to pay for it. You run out of cash. Now, this is for healthcare. I realized essentially that we had no customers because no one was really interested in the model we were pitching. Doctors want more patients. They don't want an efficient office. What is this? Value proposition. If you are selling to doctors and you say, well, we have got this great technology which will make your office so much more efficient. You think that's good, that is good, of course. But what the doctors want is, if I'm treating 40 patients, can you give me something that allows me to treat 80? And of course, there are reimbursement and payment benefits linked to that. So if you can get a doctor to do a good job from 40 to 80 patients, fantastic. But if you say, well, you still treat the same 40 people, and here is another way you can add another cost. But basically, what you are telling them is, we are taking money out of your pocket without giving you an advantage. And these are actual quotes from actual people who have done this and failed in these different sectors. Yeah, so you could argue that their customer segment that they focused on, and that is why I sort of caution teams and startups to be very careful about umbrella terms. So customers are not the same. Customers will be in smaller segments. So if it is hospitals, there'll be different kinds of hospitals, new hospitals, old hospitals, public hospitals, private hospitals, chain hospitals, 4 doctors coming together and starting a clinic. All of these change depending on the state you are in. In some states, there'll be some regulations, other states will have other regulations. Some setups or clinics, it will be a dentist clinic or orthodontist clinic. There will be similarities and differences. If it's veterinarian, there'll be similarities and differences, right? So you have to really understand that nuance and therefore be very specific as to, again, what is that first pin? What is that first target market that you are looking at? Yes. So in this case, that would perhaps have one of them. Okay. So then we have quotes like these, which say, startup developing an inexpensive module that will improve the resolution of existing MRI scanners. So people, like I meet many participants who say that, well, here is an existing big machine which is not doing things efficiently. I have this small add-on that I have invented. You can add that small new innovative device or tool to this big expensive device, and immediately that starts performing better. Now the challenge is, radiologists may love the technology in this case because it's MRI scanners, but may refuse to buy it because installing it would invalidate the manufacturer's warranty. So if your main big large device is costing you $1 million, you are not planning to validate that warranty, right? Which then means if a startup is developing something like this, of course, one pathway to move forward is to work with that manufacturer instead of trying to do something alone by themselves. And these are all actual cases of people who have food business model. This is a company that sustainably launched as a wholesale operation. In this case, they realized that too few, and so they pivot directly to consumers. So sometimes you go to the market, turns out that the market wants something different even after the change. In an earlier case, this is from a paper we did. Basically, an associate professor of chemistry to work at Genentech. He was invited to develop antibody therapeutic. But very soon they realized that the unique therapy or personalized cancer therapy, which was way ahead of its time, would have been extreme. And instead he said that let us change the applicable antibody common to all patients and not personalized. An actual case. This decision was resisted by the founders. The founders didn't like that because they had on personalized therapies, but there was no economic survive. So this person, this CEO, that tough decision based on his own experience at early biotechnology companies. and said that you are not going to cancer therapies, nobody will pay for it, and you will run out. And then they changed to manufacturing antibodies at scale, and it became a billion. Philips. Philips software company. So again, this is not science-based, but it's just indicating change their business models and their business model thinking. So Philips shifted from an originally hardware company solutions that consist of systems, software and services, where we go into different business co-accountability for health outcomes, for patient experience, for improving productivity in healthcare. So it's not just making or selling tube lights, moving into different devices, and then devices as a service. You are charging, maybe you are leasing the device and you have monthly or annual payment or contracts. So Philips as a company changes from just providing equipment or supplying products to partnering in a way with some of these healthcare or other organizations and saying, well, we will take care of this device for you. We have the service technician that we have trained. If something goes wrong, we'll replace it. All of that, there is a contract. So large and small companies. So these are 100-year-old companies, right? And so these companies are also constantly evaluating how the market is changing, how do they have to modify their plans and then move forward. So what needs to be understood is business models enable these ventures to create and capture value. So this is the way in which you generate revenues from your idea, from your venture. How can you charge your customers and customer segments? What are the ways in which you can raise funding? Business models are dynamic and can be refined over time. Okay. So your question for today and later, and how it will feed into your own presentations next week, is briefly describe your plan to generate revenues. So you would have an unmet need, you would have some customer segments. For those customer segments, you would have a value proposition. There is some reason why they should come to you and buy your product or service, because your product or service is demonstrably better on some parameter, like we discussed yesterday in the competitive matrix. And once they decide to buy or purchase from you that product or service, how will you charge them? Is it a subscription fee? Is it leasing? Is it renting? Is it direct purchase? What are the ways you will generate that revenue? What are your plans for that? That is the one question from this module that you would want to think about after all of these slides.